But look, going from one quarterback that is looking to go to a team to another quarterback that's been dismissed from his team. Alex, I'm going to come to you first. My question when I first put this in was, is Nico Iamaleava done at Tennessee? But since we prepared and set this show up, Alex, there's been some breaking news. Coach Heupel spoke to the team today. What do you say?
Yeah, he got the team together before their spring game today, and told them that Nico's no longer a part of the team. That they've parted ways. They've sent him packing, and uh, they're going in a different direction at quarterback. So it'll be interesting to see who takes the starting spot. Everything is up for grabs. It's a big day for the quarterbacks today, all of a sudden. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then with that transfer portal opening next week, it's gonna be really interesting to see what happens with Nico here. But he's not going to be wearing that orange in Tennessee anymore.
No, no, no. He will no longer be at Knoxville, Tennessee. And I mean, there's a number of questions that comes from this. First, we'll go into the reason why. And it apparently it was NIL compensation. He's getting about $2 million in the NIL, and him and his representatives wanted to see if they could potentially double that into 4 million because there's going to be new revenue sharing that the teams will be getting. So he wanted to get a piece of that. Now, Eric, I'm going to come to you, and before we even ask, was he worth that? 63, almost 64% completion percentage, 2,600 yards passing. He went 19-5, touchdown to interceptions. I think added like a couple hundred yards on the ground. They were 10-2. Um, Obviously, we saw they got blown out by the eventual champion Ohio State Buckeyes. Is it warranted? Does he have a point? I want more money. We went 10-2. Or I've also heard that Heupel he's done this with any quarterback. He had Hendon Hooker, he had Joe Milton. Both of them looked decent, or at least had the ability to play that offense. So is it just plug and play? Like, what do you thoughts about it?
Yeah, there's a whole different array of thoughts. I think 100 other teams or schools should be lining up and seeing if they can get their credit scores up
Mm,
so that they can go attract him. But I do not think Tennessee should negotiate at all with him.
mm,
They made a contract. He agreed to come to school under certain terms, and this just isn't the way to go about it. I mean, you're putting your every teammate you have at a disadvantage when you're not out there practicing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yes, this does happen in the NFL, but other quarterbacks are making decisions on what they're going to do. Are they going to transfer because of what he's doing?
mm-hmm,
Um, and if we're going to call it NIL, I mean, I wish we'd really change the name of it because this is pay for play. This isn't NIL.
mm,
Um, if he wants more NIL money, call Verizon, call Gatorade, get
mm-hmm,
your NIL money because that's what that is.
Yeah.
Um, what this is holding your team hostage for a better payday. If that's going to happen, then it should all happen very quietly. Now maybe Tennessee rebuked it over and over and over for all we know. But in the
Sounds like
same
it.
right, yeah, in the same right, from his standpoint, you are 9 months away from the draft, essentially.
mm-hmm.
Like, I can't imagine that he was planning on staying for another year, just based
Got it.
on how he committed. He was taking private planes when he was a recruit to
Mm,
the different recruiting visits he went to. He was on our
mm-hmm.
radar for a little time, and his demeanor and his family's outlook um, had us cut him out of us trying to compete for him. So, just with a little background on that, I don't think this is like a new thing. I think he was
Mm-hmm.
doing this as a senior out of high school, and him being
Well,
he and his family. So, all right, so now he has to go learn a new system. He has to go to a school where he might be going to a worse school for a better payday, and he's
mm,
hurting his stock. He was going to look good under Heupel next year.
Yeah.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, so there's just a lot of bad looks. But at the end of the day, Tennessee can't negotiate here because that's telling 105 other guys, all right, we're open for business when you don't like what you're getting tomorrow. and
Right.
that's just bad for culture.
Yeah.
So,
It
but
is.
there's going to be a school who's going to get a good quarterback.
Yeah, it is bad for culture. It is bad. And to your point, Eric, you're talking about, he was taking jets, and we know this guy's a 5-star recruit, 6'6", so he's got that prototypical build. But Alex, I mean, you were mentioning that, wasn't it Coach Lanning that called Coach Heupel and said, "Hey, this guy's shopping. He's looking for money elsewhere." Like, he's taking advantage of this pay for play and taking advantage of the stuff, but I think Eric's got a point. I think it's going to be to his detriment. I mean,
Yeah.
because you're going to have to now go, like he said, learn a whole new system and all that, and hope that you have the same type of success. We've seen how many times that has not worked over the
Yep.
years. So, what does this mean for him going forward? Where could he go?
I mean, there were a couple really good spots brought up in our group chat earlier. Eric said USC. I think that's a really good spot. I think you got to go to a spot with a quarterback whisperer per se, a coach. I
Mm-hmm.
think you've got to go somewhere that they've got a history developing quarterbacks. Lincoln Riley obviously has that, and he's from Southern California, so I think that's a really good fit there. The one thing I'd be worried about though, if I'm teams trying to get him, obviously this situation that just happened, where he didn't like the money he was getting, so he sat out of practice yesterday. He just didn't show up. No
Yeah.
meetings, no practice, no nothing. And so good on Heupel for standing his ground and booting him because of it.
Yeah.
But the other thing is the on-field play. While the numbers look good and there were a lot of moments where he was great, every time there was a big game, he crumbled. He looked awful
Yes.
against Ohio State. He did not look good
Yes.
against Alabama. He does not look good against Georgia. Every year when he's playing the top tier teams, he crumbles. So I'd be a little worried if I was a team, say, that's gunning for a championship this year. I'm probably not looking for him at quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And yeah, and that's the thing. And you talk about character. He has ability, but even to your point, they went 10-2, but he had what, 2,600 yards. And
Yeah,
normally, if a guy has
19
2,500,
touchdowns. Like,
right? You know what I mean? Normally, he has then maybe 800 yards rushing, or there's a reason that he's compensating for not throwing as much, but he didn't even have that.
yeah.
And I think Eric, and either of you guys can answer, but I'll come to you first, Eric. I mean, I think you alluded to it. Does this address a bigger issue? We talked about it last week, and that's Nathan. Shout out to Nathan saying this is exactly why NIL needs reforming. You called it pay for play, and now these guys are essentially now clients that are saying, "Hey, I don't want to go here. Maybe I want to go there. Maybe I'll see." Well, how do we get a handle on this? This now money's flying all over the place, and guys feel entitled to go X, Y, and Z other places.
Yeah, that's a great question. The problem is that there's always going to be someone who won't get in line, and I don't mean by the players.
Yeah.
So let's look at the NFL for example. I think about this pretty often. We've got 32 teams. We're really limited on how many quarterbacks we've got.
Mm-hmm.
They're making 50, 60 million dollars a year, right? And that's because no owner is willing to say, no, I'm not going to pay Sam Darnold, you know, what Sam Darnold is probably actually worth
Mm-hmm.
because I have to have a chance to have the guy. Now, if all 32 teams could get together and go, this is getting outlandish,
Hmm.
we should be in a certain range for quarterbacks, but there's always going to be one person or one team that pushes the envelope a little further. And
Mm-hmm.
if they're going to do it, that means the next person has to do it.
Yep.
So I don't really don't know if there's a way to get the toothpaste back in because we're talking 50 different states. We're talking state laws.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking unionization. Um, I mean, this is now, and we've already set the precedent at this point. When they went into doing this without any real guidance, that's when this became, you know, unfixable to some degree. So rather than go back and change things, I think you have to embrace it and figure out how to navigate the current waters. And I'll be honest, I am not that smart, because this is a very, very complicated issue.
Oh yeah. I echo your sentiments 100%. And it's almost like, they had the dam set, they let the dam out, and now they're sitting here trying to close this thing back up. But you can't. Once
Mm-hmm.
that's flowing, you can't shut it down. So this is going to probably get worse before it gets better, as we see the money is flowing. And look, we all like to jump on the players for doing it, but they're just taking a page for what the coaches are
Yep.
doing. How many times did a coach come into somebody's house, somebody's living room, and say, "Oh yeah, he's going to be here, and I promise I'm going to be here with him for 4 years," and then 8 months later, they're getting a contract going somewhere else because of how much success they had. So while we want to
Mm-hmm.
jump on the players for this, I think we also need to address the coaches. And look, somebody that has far more intelligence than we do could potentially work this thing out and figure it out. But to your point, Eric, some teams don't necessarily want it to be figured out. Some teams, they
Oh,
want to pay their money to get their guy. They want to sit here and say, "Oh, that's how much you want to come play. Oh yeah, come on over here. We'll do that." And they don't
well,
care about any of the extra
yeah.
stuff. Go ahead, Eric.
Well, I mean, people talk about salary caps. They were paying players before
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
NIL.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the salary cap going to stop the alumni car dealer from still giving envelope full of cash to, you know, the player for
And
Alabama versus if Memphis actually gets to use their $25 million salary cap, they're still not
Mm,
competing with Alabama.
right.
So, I mean, yeah, it's just wild, man.
and
Mm-hmm.
where's that salary cap going to come from for some of these smaller schools?
Mm,
Because
State
you
schools.
can't make it even, right? And if you make it even to where the big schools have to use less, then kind of like what Eric was saying, what's stopping these guys from still gifting cars and houses and all this other stuff on the side? And we can only give you so much money out in the open, but all this other stuff's going to come to you under the table.
mm-hmm.
Like there's all that stuff going on, and then as far as like how to regulate it, I could be wrong about this, but I think when the Big Ten and SEC were talking about doing that essentially like super conference or super league kind of thing, there was talks of setting the revenue sharing and actually doing kind of like a cap in how much you can spend, and I believe there were talks into that. So um,
But isn't that a different thing than name, image, and likeness?
they were essentially going to do away with name, image, and likeness and just make it like a
But
freaking.
but you can't do away with that.
If they go do their
Co-
own separate thing from the NCAA, though, they can.
But they still can't because you're an employee at this point. So you're telling me that I can't now go. So I go to Oregon. You give me $5 million of the $25 million cap,
Yeah.
and then Phil Knight pays me $5 million to be in a Nike commercial. That's not part of the
So,
salary cap.
one, I when I said do away with name, image, and likeness, it's essentially like what the NFL, NBA, and all that do, where you still can have all your endorsements and stuff on the side. So,
I
name, image, and
agree, but I'm saying that the that negates the point of the salary cap to begin with.
agreed,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, and that's where there's never going to be a concrete like great solution to this, because there's always going to be there's insanely smart people for all these teams that are like, well, it within this rule there's this loophole here. Look at what Stallions did for Michigan, where there was nothing concrete in the rule about the stuff he was doing, but he found any little loophole or gray area he could and stretched as far as he could. There's
Mm-hmm.
people like that at every school. It might not be with the advanced scouting. It might be with recruiting. It might be with stretching name, image, and likeness. It might be with, like Oregon this year, where they did the 12 people on the field. So Ohio State burned the clock, but only
Oh
gained
yeah.
5 yards on the play or whatever. There's people at all these teams finding any little loophole they can. So, and that's
Right.
always going to be a thing.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
absolutely. And
Yep.
yeah, man, the one thing you could do is reduce roster size. But then now we're talking about taking scholarships away from kids.
Mm,
So, I mean, that's what made college football great to begin with. So,
Mm-hmm.
right. And look, yeah, like they both alluded to, like I would put a bow on it, that these type of things are going to happen because, like Handy said, these boosters they want to win. These coaches they want to win.
Yeah.
Us as fans want our teams to win. And when you have that demand, and then you look over at Ohio State, who spent $20 million on X, Y, and Z. You look at the Georgias and all these teams spending big money on their guys, and you say, if we do like they do, then that's what we're going to do. Which means you got to bring in a coach and pay him some money. Which means you got to bring in top recruits
Mm-hmm.
and pay them. And then even at that point, you still might not win it all. And
Hey,
that's
we
the
just
crazy
spent
thing.
$12 million over the next 4 years on a quarterback that hasn't played a snap yet. So,
Right, right.
like,
So we're going to see this NIL and pay for play and all of this is going to be conversations that will not die anytime soon. Um, Handy said NIL is also killing the walk-on
oh, it's
program
done
as
away with.
well.
eliminated. Yeah, just
Yeah.
straight up eliminated it. It's gone.
Yeah, but here's the issue: some of the validation data isn't accessible. So to that, I think that's more towards your point, Alex, is that there's a lot of things that we're not seeing. Or Eric, both of you guys made the point on it, like that we're not seeing. We might see this NIL that they get, or this sponsor they get, or whatever, but then we're not seeing. Joe Blow over here saying, "Hey, you get a couple touchdowns this week. Let me go ahead and take you out. Let me pay your house or your rent. Let me get you take you to that car dealership. Let me
Which is
this
the
stuff.
exact same stuff that was always happening.
Yeah.
And
Oh
it's
yeah.
still
Oh yeah.
happening on the side. Like,
And this
Oh yeah.
and this can happen in the NFL too, but that's not a problem because you don't, at least initially, get to pick where you go in the NFL.
mm-hmm.
Right.
So,
Yeah, it's
Right.
not a bidding
So
war right off the bat. It's
yeah.
draft process.
yeah, it's going to be quite interesting.